So, what on earth does computer programming have to do with leading a school? I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But stick with me. Today, we're going to dive into how the basic logic of code, the rules of permission and trust, actually gives us this incredible new lens to rethink educational leadership. We're talking about how rewriting those rules can unlock a school's entire potential.
So, to get this, our story doesn't start in a principal's office. Nope. It starts in front of a computer screen with a problem that is, well, super common and incredibly frustrating. Picture this, a coder just staring at that blinking cursor. They're trying to figure out what went wrong. Was it a single missing bracket? A forgotten semicolon? Just one tiny, tiny mistake, and the whole system just collapses. It's maddening, right? And listen, if you were coding back in, say, the late 90s, this was just your life. You had to build everything by hand. If you wanted it to work, you had to do it all yourself, period. But then things started to change. We moved away from that grueling solo slog into this whole new world of open source systems. And this was an absolutely monumental shift. Think about it. We went from coding every little thing from scratch to building on top of the work of countless others. It was a revolution, really. And it was all built on this new architecture of trust. A system that let people collaborate and debug and create together on a massive scale. So the big question is, what made all this collaboration possible? Well, it all boiled down to a really simple, kind of elegant logic, and it's all captured in just 3 letters. RWX. That's read, write, and execute. Now, these are the fundamental permissions that, govern basically every file on a computer. Read access, that just lets you see something. Write access lets you change it. And execute, well, that's the big one. That lets you actually run the thing to make something happen. Okay, so this 3-step logic, it's like the silent engine running the entire digital world. And it's not just about sharing code, right? It's about managing who gets to do what with real precision. And the really crucial part here is that it allows for ownership and action, that third permission, execute, to happen safely and at a huge scale. It's how the whole system can grow without just falling apart. And here's where we pivot. This is the big so what. Because the very same principles that create elegant, resilient code, well, they should now guide how we think about our organizations, especially our schools. The challenges we're all facing today, they're not just technical problems. At their core, they're about how we manage trust and access and agency among people. Which brings us right to the heart of the problem. The absolutely immense and, frankly, unsustainable pressure that's being piled on modern school leaders. Okay, get ready for this number. A report from Bain & Company found that a typical school principal has, wait for it, 47 direct reports. 47. Now, to put that in perspective, a manager in like an HR or finance department, they have about 5. Just 5. That single stat just perfectly captures the insane scale of the leadership challenge in our schools. And it's not even just about the sheer number of people. It's this cascade of complex, compounding pressures. Leaders are supposed to be instructional gurus, mental health counselors, security experts, and political navigators, all at the same time. The result is what you could call an organizational overflow. The old systems, they just can't handle all the inputs anymore. They're breaking. So this brings us right back to our coding metaphor. Today's school leaders, they're often forced to be like that lonely coder back in the 90s. They're just patching and hacking away on these old legacy systems, like the traditional top-down org chart, that were never ever built to handle this level of chaos and complexity. Okay, so if the old system is broken, what's the alternative? Where do we go from here? Well, the solution starts with a completely new framework for thinking about leadership design. This model here from Wayne High, it helps us see leadership as this constant balancing act. It's a tug of war between 2 big forces, order on one side and freedom on the other. And here's the key. Effective leadership isn't about picking one over the other, control versus autonomy. It's about intentionally and thoughtfully blending these 2 forces based on what the situation actually calls for. And you know what? This completely changes the leader's role. It's a total shift. Let's look at a few real-world examples. In the old days, a principal might have been the final judge, the arbiter on what books get chosen. But today, with so many different people having a stake in that, their role has to shift to being a facilitator of a bigger conversation. They're no longer just the enforcer of policy. They have to be a translator, someone who can bring all these different needs and perspectives together.
So here's the bottom line. As our teachers, students, and parents gain more knowledge and more direct experience, in other words, as they gain relevance and expertise, well, excluding them from decisions doesn't just feel unfair. It actually creates friction. It creates resistance. The authority has to follow the expertise, not just the lines on some old org chart. And this brings us full circle, right back to where we started. Leaders and the organizations they lead are staring down a fundamental choice about how they're going to operate from here on out.
And it all comes down to this one really powerful question. Look, it's easy to create a task force, right? Or send out a survey. That's giving people read and write access. You're asking for their input. But are leaders willing to grant execute permission? Are they really, truly prepared to share ownership of the outcomes, the good and the bad? That is the massive difference between just symbolic inclusion and real distributed leadership.
And so here we are facing the very same choice as that coder staring at the blinking cursor. What do we do? Do we just keep patching the old, failing system, kind of crossing our fingers and hoping it holds together for one more day? Or do we start the hard but absolutely necessary work of rewriting the code, recoding for a new system, one that's actually built on trust, on shared expertise, and on this idea of elegant interdependence?
Listen, this new way, it's not going to be perfect. The code won't compile on the first try. For sure, there are going to be bugs and setbacks. But as the source material for this whole thing so powerfully puts it, that's not a flaw. That's not something to be avoided. That is the future.